missiles as just glorified form of artillery, not a whole new means of transportation. I mean, so they would come up to me and say things like this. So, how much range do you think that a missile has, Colonel Korolev? And of course, I had to tell them, well, the range is unlimited. Those German missiles, they have enough thrust to reach London. Increase the thrust some more, and you could hit America. Oh, well, our generals like that idea. Increase the thrust enough, and you could send an artificial satellite into orbit around the Earth. Well, our generals thought that was fantasy, but our German prisoner, he understood. Yeah, that is theoretically possible, Herr General. To reach such a velocity to escape the Earth's gravity. Wunderbar! Stop talking nonsense, or we'll beat some sense into you. Colonel, resume interrogation. Well, I tried to explain to them, those German missiles, they have the thrust to reach London. Increase the thrust some more, they could hit America. And of course, the generals liked that idea. Increase the thrust some more beyond that, and you could increase the range so much that you would not come back down. That you would overshoot the whole planet with the rocket into orbit around the Earth. Ha! I like that idea. Our generals did not. But what would be the point in that, comrade? Increase the velocity another 40%, and we could visit the moon. We should work together to achieve this. Should I write that down, Comrade General? Our generals have so little. Aventura crazy dreams. We have no time for such fantasies. We are here to learn about rockets, not outer space. Back to interrogation. Colonel Korolev. Back to interrogation. Well, you know what I was thinking? Well, I should tell you what I was thinking. Wasted. All those years wasted. Just think where we Russians could have been. If they had not carted us all off to the Gulag for all those years, we would have been the ones building rockets in the 1940s. I am certain of it, certain of it. Instead, here we were, forced to take lessons from our German prisoners like mere schoolboys. Ah! It leaves a bitter taste in my mouth like bad vodka. Well, they wonder why I have such bad temper. Oh, there were many bitter tastes in those days. My wife, she divorced me. Or maybe I divorced her, I don't know, it's hard to say. We had been apart for so long. When I got back from the Sharaga, I had my work. She had her work. She was a doctor. She was away a lot, and so was I, trying to get our missile program off the ground, literally. And I will admit it, there were other women. Can you blame me? I was under a lot of pressure. Let's not talk about that right now. Let's talk about what's really important. I will give Stalin credit for this much. I don't think he had anything to do with me being put in the Gulag. It was just the nature of things. It's best not to think that. But Stalin had everything to do with starting a missile program after the war. He saw right away what was at stake, the security of the fatherland. Stalin wanted missiles. Well, by God, then we will build missiles. Stalin wanted missiles powerful enough to reach North America. I wanted missiles powerful enough to reach the moon. Are those so different? We spent years trying to copy what the Germans had done. I begged for permission to build a rocket of our own. I knew we could do it. It was just a matter of getting permission. But no, Stalin wanted to make sure that we could copy what the Germans had done first. I don't think he had much confidence in us. But I did. One day, I went up to a young fellow in our design bureau, Oleg. I think his name was Oleg. quick, but the word, please. Yes, sir. Well, now, no one ever wants a boss to come over and ask for just a word, please. You know, it is never just a word. I have a special request for you, Oleg. Oh, yes, sir. What is it? Well, he's a bit relieved now. He feels like he's out of whatever trouble he thought he was in. That rocket design that you are working on, there is something I would like you to add. Oh, yes, sir. A pilot's cabin. Well, now, Oleg must have thought I was out of my mind. A pilot's cabin, sir? Yes, with room for just one pilot. I don't understand, sir. People like that, they drive me crazy. What is there to understand? I want a pilot's cabin. But why do we need a pilot's cabin, sir? These are rockets. Rockets don't need a pilot, they fly themselves. Just humor me, little one. Someday, we might want a pilot's cabin. Design me a rocket with a pilot's cabin. Yes, sir. Well, what can you say? This is Russia. Do it well, and there will be some extra rubles in your paycheck. Extra rubles always gets their attention. Oh, yes, sir. And make sure it won't depressurize. All right. So, I admitted I was thinking way far ahead, especially since we had not even fired off a single missile of our own. Just some that we copied from the Germans. But you'd have to admit it. We would need a pilot's cabin someday. Huh? Now off you go, Oleg. Ah, so where was I? Oh, yes. The R series. Just like the Germans. We had the R1, R2. The Germans had the V1, V2. Those are our copies. Except by now, we had worked our way up to the R7. Of course, it was just in the design phase. That was in 1953. I remember it exactly because 3 things happened that year that changed everything. Stalin died. Oh, thank God. Khrushchev took over. Oh, we sure remember that. And the third, well, I'll get to the third. Let me go on with the story. So, Khrushchev, he knew nothing about the rocket program. I guess Stalin hadn't told him. Stalin probably hadn't told anyone he was like that. So I got called up to Moscow to brief our new leader on the whole rocket program. I explained all about the R7 and that if we built it, how it could fly 7,000 kilometers far enough to reach North America. You should have seen Khrushchev's face. Well, he looked just like this fellow right here. He was dumbfounded. In fact, all of them in the Kremlin were dumbfounded. Oh, they were like sheep being shown a new gate for the first time. They knew nothing about any of this. So of course they said yes. Build it. Build it fast. Build as many as you can. A missile that can hit America. Oh, who wouldn't say yes to that? The fools. That's all they cared about. That and the bomb. Oh yes, that was the other big thing in '53, of course. We set off our own nuclear bomb. I'll never forget when they came to tell me about the bomb. The generals thought they had done something wrong, made a mistake somehow. A big mistake. You know how the generals are. Gorlev, come here! We must have a word now! Well, of course, it's never just a word. And you can tell they were very anxious about something. Sergei Pavlovich, your missile. How much can it carry? We must know now. Well, now from an engineering perspective, that is just an engineering issue. You need to carry more weight, you add more thrust, you build a bigger rocket, that's all. But that's not quite how I answered him. How much do you need it to carry, Comrade General? Sakharov's bomb. They say it weighs 5 metric tons. Can you carry 5 metric tons? You know, these generals, they still never grasped the concept of thrust and range. They knew just enough to know that weight mattered somehow. Well, it's heavier than we thought. Is that a problem, Sergei Pavlovich? Now, you really knew they were desperate when they called you by your patronymic. That's your first name. So, I did some rough calculations in my head, or at least pretended to make them think I had to think about it some. Well, we'll just have to scale up the R7 to carry that heavy of a payload. Well, then it's not a problem. Well, of course not. You can scale up anything. It will just take more thrust than before. By which what I really meant, I'll just need more rubles. But you know what the generals wanted to know. But it can still reach America? Oh, I had to laugh. Well, give me enough rubles, and I can increase the thrust enough so it will reach the moon. No interest in the moon. Oh, Skarlev, you crazy dreamer. Just make it powerful enough to reach North America. Khrushchev will give you all the rubles you need for that. Andrei Sakharov. I could buy him a drink. Oh, his bomb was too heavy. So now they had to let me make a bigger rocket. And if it was going to be powerful enough to reach across half of the Earth to carry 5 metric tons, well, who's to say it could not carry something much lighter all the way into orbit around the Earth? As a test, you understand? Purely as a test. I wouldn't want you to think that we would let anything stand in the way of our military priorities. But then, if we could add a second stage, we could go to the moon. Oh, Andrei Sakharov! This is for you. Well, that's how we did it. It's true. I mean, I won't say I tricked him. I mean, I just gave them what they wanted. And a little bit more that they didn't know that they wanted. You know the problem with these politicians and these generals, you know? They have no sense of adventure. No sense of history. History is very important. Why, did you know that we Russians practically invented rockets? I bet you didn't even know who Kovalchich was. Nikolai Kovalchich? Well, he was the first to figure out how to use slow-burning explosives as a means of propulsion. That was decades before your Wright brothers and their puny propeller plane. And there were many others. Neslinovsky and Lebedev. Oh, and Tchaikovsky. Oh, God, what can I say about Tchaikovsky? I mean, he figured out everything. Everything. You can read about it. In the same year that your Wright brothers were still kicking the sand, trying to get their invention in the air, Tchaikovsky was figuring out the principles of space travel. Let you Americans with your shorelines, you sail the seas. It is destiny that we Russians, we landlocked Russians, sail the stars. All those men I mentioned, they did all those things on their own, and then we had a revolution. Now look at this. I mean, we can't do anything unless it's in the 5-year plan. I mean, not that I'm complaining, mind you. I am, after all, a member of the party, the card-carrying communist. And not that it means anything. It's just the only way to get anything done. And what is an engineer who cannot get things done? A mere dreamer. Poof. God knows, left to their own devices, the generals and the politicians, they would not do a thing. Oh, they would still want their missiles. But they're so busy looking down at their lives. They never take the time to look up at the stars. Does the General Secretary even know where the moon is, I wonder? But I do. And I send it fraternal socialistic greetings if I must. Moscow. They still do not understand that this thing we call the space race, it had already begun. You Americans had all the top Germans. You had to be doing the same thing. You know, a man like von Braun would not be content to fire off a few test missiles in the desert. You had to know. He had his eyes on the stars. But so were mine. So were mine. Even in our darkest days. It is at the darkest time of night you see the stars best, they say. Oh, and we had some very dark days. You did not know about them. They were not publicized, of course. All the failures we had back in the 50s. The generals would come around to see me, and it was more than just a word this time. So, comrade, your missile seems to be having problems. You know, it is never a good thing when generals talk about problems. There are some in Moscow that are wondering if the R7 will ever fly. How many rockets have you had explode on you now? 4? 5? Well, that made me really angry. Well, of course they explode. What do you expect them to do? We are building the most powerful machines in the world. What is a rocket launch but an explosion? A controlled explosion, comrade! A controlled explosion. You can't seem to control anything. These generals, they just did not understand experimentation. Do you think von Braun had to explain himself like this in front of the Americans? I told them. But we have learned something from every single one of those explosions. All 5 of them. The generals did not want tests. They wanted results. And finally, we got results. 21 August 1957. The R7 flew for more than 6,000 kilometers from Central Asia all the way to Kamchatka. We had done it. We had our first intercontinental ballistic missile, an ICBM they call them now. I got called before all of the generals to explain what this meant. Now the R7 is equipped with 20 engines. It takes off with 1 million pounds of thrust, making it the most powerful missile we have constructed yet. Then there was this general with a chest full of medals. He could not contain himself any longer. Wow! So we can consider this missile operational? I think operational was their favorite this word. They just did not understand experimentation. So I tried to explain it to him again. The next logical step for the R7, Comrade General, would be to reduce the size of the payload. Then by a certain reduction of the payload, it would be possible for the satellite payload to reach the necessary velocity of 8,000 miles per second. Well, you would have thought a fox just turned up into a coop full of chickens. They all cackled at once. Oh, what is meant by this word satellite? Why is 8,000 miles the necessary velocity? Will it still be able to reach America? Well, of course, I was a bit of a fox, and I did try to answer their questions as best I could. I mean, that with the thrust of the R7, we can use this missile to launch an artificial satellite into orbit around the Earth. Well, that set them off. Preposterous, ridiculous, who ever heard of such a thing? A waste of money, too risky, quite as Ross. Well, I had to turn the question around on them. I had to beat them at their own game. So, perhaps let me phrase that question differently. Does the USSR want to try to become the first country to launch a satellite? Or would you rather let the Americans do that? Well, that did it. The whole room fell silent. No one wanted you Americans to be first at anything. Finally, one of the generals ventured to say something. Oh, that is somewhat of a different question now, isn't it, comrades? Very different indeed, and I couldn't help but just turn the screws a little bit more. Perhaps this is a question we should present to the Central Committee in Moscow, or do you wish to reject the idea here? Well, that made it impossible for them to say no. No one wanted it on their record that they blocked a chance for a Soviet first. So naturally, they had to forward the recommendation on to Moscow. Tell the party in Moscow that we are ready to carry out the party's wishes. And the party in Moscow, well, they had no idea what the generals were talking about, artificial satellites. But if the generals thought it was a good idea and something they could do, well, who were the apparatchiks in the Kremlin to say no? Especially if it meant beating you Americans. And no one wanted it on their record either. So that is how we launched Sputnik. I wonder, did von Braun have to play games like that? Come to think of it, von Braun came in second, now didn't he? Oh, the factory workers who built Sputnik, well, they had no idea what they were doing. I mean, they just came into work one day and all the walls had been painted. Something the party ordered, something I ordered. I wanted them to see how important this was. I practically lived in the factory while they were building Sputnik. I had them put it on a stand in the middle of the floor so everyone could see it, this thing, this satellite that they were building. I mean, it was nothing more than a transmitter inside of a ball, really. But it was going where no one had ever gone before. It was going into space. And I wanted them to have reverence for it. I even got some velvet for them to put it on. Do you know how hard it is to get velvet? But I got my hands on some. Well, now that impressed the factory workers, especially the ladies. There were a lot of ladies in the factory. Oh, and that dressing down that I gave the chief plant engineer, well, now that got everyone's attention too. They say I am a hard taskmaster. Do you think I am a hard taskmaster? You don't have to answer this. But you see, I just wanted things done just so. This was history we were making. History. And the plant engineer, well, he was demonstrating how the nose cone would jettison and the Sputnik would separate from the booster. He had a model he was using, and, well, I had to make a point. Is there something wrong, Comrade Coral? Wrong. Wrong? How dare you ask me if there is something wrong? Are you too ignorant yourself to see what is wrong? Look at your satellite, look at it. I said I want it polished. Polished until it shines. Look at this. I have never seen such shoddy workmanship in my whole life. This will never do, never, never. You must do better than this. Must I report you to the party? Is this simply incompetence? Or downright insubordination? Well, that put the fear into him for certain. He started sputtering something about, oh, this is just a model, a mock-up. The real satellite is over there where you told me to put it. Now I got really mad. I know it's a model, damn it! Of course it's a model. I was not brought here on turnip wagon. But do you know why this model is important? No! Well, you know, he had no idea whatsoever, the poor bastard, so I told him. Because once we launch Sputnik into space, this model is all we will have to show the world. This ball will be exhibited in museums. So I want it polished, polished for posterity. You know, it is true. None of these people could see beyond their own nose. But I had no such orders. I am sorry, comrade. Well, you have your orders now. I want this model to shine. And you know what? It did. We were on a tight schedule. We knew you Americans had to be doing the same thing. And besides, I wanted it finished before the State Commission in Moscow changed its mind. So there we were, at the Baikonur test site. There was no cosmodrome there, just a test site. 4th of October, 1957. I shall never forget that day. Shot, Viet, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, Diva, Odin, Liftoff. There's fire and smoke. 20 engines burning, all 20. The rocket. She starts to rise. She leaves the tower. It was the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. Just this slender flame arcing across the sky. And then she's gone. Our engineers track her down range until she's out of range. Now, it is just a matter of waiting. If it were, if Sputnik had gone into orbit, it would just take an hour to circle the Earth and come back around for us to leave. That hour must have been the longest hour of our lives. But the generals, they still did not understand. So, Korolev, if something goes wrong, where will your Sputnik come down? Well, the Sputnik does not reach orbit. It could come down anywhere. Anywhere? Anywhere. The forests of Siberia, Pacific Ocean, the United States even. Suddenly, they were not so interested in a